Hi guys, so we're starting our overhead focus flow. So you'll need a lightweight, a TheraBand and a broom handle. And we're starting on our fronts today, so it's really important to make sure you keep your neutral pelvis, neutral lower back. So we don't want you to go into any extension into the lower back because you're going to end up just irritating your lower back if you do that. So come and lay in fronts. Okay, so we'll start with our connection first of all. So again, like we do when we're on our backs, we're just going to start by trying to get a neutral lower back, neutral pelvis. So you're just going to start by tilting the pelvis forwards and backwards. And we're trying to use our core muscles to do this. We don't want to just squeeze the bum to bring the pelvis into a posterior position. So the glutes want to stay relaxed. Hamstrings, quads and calves want to stay relaxed as well. And we're just tilting the pelvis backwards and forwards until we feel the midpoint between the two end ranges, and your pubic bone should be connected with the floor. So where we should be feeling our connection is underneath both our thighs, the pubic bone, and at the moment the front of the head and the medial forearm and elbow. So we'll get that connection at the pubic bone first of all. So if you can't feel your pubic bone pressing into the floor, you've probably not got your neutral pelvis, neutral lower back. So just try and tilt it a little bit further so that you can feel that pubic bone connection. So then we're going to go up to the ribs, the rib cage, so around the TL junction. And again, we're going to think of the ribs and pelvis like the pages of a book. So what we want is for the pages to be closed. We don't want that open book appearance. So in this position, if you can feel your ribs pressing into the floor, you've probably got that open book appearance and lumbar extension. So we're just going to try and bring the ribs into connection with the pelvis. So you'll feel your rib cage lift off the floor. And then we're going to go up to the shoulders. So you want to think about creating a neutral shoulder by externally rotating and depressing the shoulder blade. So we don't want the shoulders to be up by your ears. So you're going to try and think about pulling your shoulder blade down towards your back pocket on the same side. And that medial elbow is going to push down into the floor and the hands are going to push into the floor. You want the wrists neutral, so your middle finger is going to be in line with your forearm. And then your head is going to be connecting with the floor. So what we don't want is for the neck to be an extension or into flexion. So you're going to be looking straight down towards the floor with that neck in a neutral position. Okay, so let's just start with our breath now. So we're just going to try and get our breath in the right order. So you're just going to think about your breath. A little bit more tricky to do in this position. Think about getting it in the right order so that the tummy's going to press towards the floor when you take a breath in, and then it's going to lift away from the floor when you take your breath out. You're going to breathe in and feel the tummy press towards the floor, and then it's going to lift away from the floor on the breath out. So just spend a few breaths just visualising what's happening, thinking about that tummy pressing into the floor on the breath in and relaxing on the breath out. Okay, so we want to now create our 360-degree breath. So if you feel like you can support your Your lower back in a neutral position and pelvis in neutral position just through your core muscles. You can put your hands around your waist to feel that 360-degree breath. But if you feel like taking your hands away from the floor and the elbows away from the floor, you lose that that position and go into lumbar extension. Just keep your elbows pressing into the floor, keep your shoulders active, keep your ribcage off the floor, and just try and visualise even harder now those muscles around the abdominal wall expanding outwards on the breath in and relaxing on the breath out. If you are able to support your core and put your hands around your waist and you want to have a little cough and just feel the muscles expand, and then use that as a bit of a wake up to let your brain know where your muscles are. So keep the shoulders active, external rotation and depression, rib cage off the floor, pubic bone pressing into the floor. And think about creating that 360-degree breath. So from front to back and from side to side wants to be equal. Breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, through your pursed lips, like you're blowing through a straw. Okay, so once we've got the 360 breath, we're going to work on our brace. So you're going to create your 360-degree breath. And before you take your breath out, you're going to do an outward push, like you're imagining that you're about to fart. And then try not to let the muscles completely relax as you're breathing out. So keep that activation throughout the breath in and out. Do one more breath. Okay, so we're just going to start now by pushing the floor away with the forearms, with that medial elbow, and you're just going to lift your head up off the floor, keeping the shoulders in that external rotation and abduction. And we're just going to start by thinking about what the spine's doing. So we want to make sure that we've not gone into that lumbar extension and that anterior tilt. So make sure you've got that pubic bone connection with the floor. And then one of the things that stops that overhead movement is that mobility in the upper back. So we want to try and think about that upper back lengthening, so lengthening through that upper back, trying to bring that chest down to the floor. So imagine we want to come away from this flexed position and just try and bring the upper back down into an extension position. So we're lengthening through the upper back. Imagine you've got that piece of string attaching to your chest bone, bringing it down towards the floor. But what you don't want to do is just drop into lumbar extension as you're doing that. Whereas if you're someone who's quite rounded through the upper back, we want to work on trying to bring that upper back into extension and lengthen. If you're someone who's quite flat through the upper back, you're going to need to really try hard to push your forearms down into the floor, try and separate that the shoulder blades, try and lift the spine towards the shoulder blades, but without rounding your upper back. So just holding that position. So this is quite tough on your shoulders, so If you can't hold it for too long, don't worry, just lower yourself down, reset, and then get your breath and lift again. Make sure that you're not going into neck extension when you do this, so you're keeping your neck nice and long as well. Keep lengthening through the spine, through the upper back, through the neck, keeping that neutral pelvis, neutral lower back. 10 more seconds. Make sure your glutes are staying nice and relaxed as well, so you're not just squeezing your glutes. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Just lower yourselves down again. And then just bring your hands into your sides. And we're just going to do a little bit of shoulder flexion. So we're just going to take the hands above the head. Into shoulder flexion, and then bring them back down, and then up and down. So just keep doing that movement. Try and keep your pubic bone into the floor if you can, so we're keeping that neutral pelvis, neutral lower back. Do a couple more. And then leave your hands up over your head. And you're just going to try and extend, to flex your shoulder a little bit further. So just do one at a time. So alternating shoulder lifts. So lift one hand off the floor and then lift the other hand. So alternating sides, and if you push your other hand, so the hand that's still on the floor, push that down into the floor as you lift the other arm. So still try and keep the ribs and pelvis connected. Try not to let those separate. So just alternating arms. Just do a few more each side. Okay, bring your hands back into your sides, either side of your chest. Make sure you've got your neutral pelvis, neutral lower back. Create your 360 breath, and then you're just going to push up into your 6-month prone. And then from the 6-month prone, we're just going to start to hinge the hips backwards into that quadruped position, and then hinge further back. So keep that neutral pelvis, neutral lower back still, keep that lengthening through the spine, and you're just going to flex both your shoulders. So you're going all the way back as far as you can, creating that shoulder flexion. And then extend out of that position. Keep your neutral pelvis, neutral lower back. Back into your 6-month prone. And then hinge backwards again. So you're just going to go between 6-month prone to a deep quadruped hinge with some shoulder flexion. Back into 6-month prone. Really controlling what's happening in the spine and in the pelvis. And when you get all the way back, try and just reach into it so you'll feel that flexion through the shoulder, feel those shoulder muscles stretching. And then this next one, just take one of your hands away from the floor. We're just going to do some single arm stretching. So we're flexing the hips back again. Flexing one shoulder and forwards. Keep the hand pushing down into the floor. Keep full connection of that hand. Trying to flex the shoulder as much as possible as we come backwards. Keeping nice and neutral through the spine. And then this next one, you're just going to come back and you're just going to rotate your body a little bit to look the opposite way, and you'll feel a stretch down the back of that shoulder. And just hold that position and feel that stretch. Couple more seconds. Come out of it, swap hands. Make sure you've got your good, nice spine position, and we're just gonna flex the hips, and we're just taking one arm back into flexion. So backwards and forwards, hinging into the hip, nice and long through the spine, and flexing the shoulder. So a nice deep flexion stretch. Make sure we're keeping those ribs and pelvis connected. And then this next one, go all the way back, and you're just going to rotate around a little bit so you can feel more of a stretch down the back of that shoulder. Breathe into it, and then come out. Come up into your quadruped position, and then just do some single arm shoulder flexion. So one arm up, so if you're taking your left arm up, your weight's going to transfer into your right hand and left knee, and we want to keep the rib cage connected with the pelvis. Bring it down, swap sides, and take the other arm up. So just alternating sides, working on that shoulder flexion with keeping the ribs and pelvis connected. Just do a couple more. And then what I want you to do next is we're gonna do some hip extensions. So come up onto your knees, keep this hinge position here, arms down by your sides. And then we're just gonna extend the hips and take the arms up into the air. And then hinge back down again, and up. Back down, and up. So again, try to keep nice and long through the spine, and we're just creating a nice controlled hinge through the hip. As we take the arms up into flexion, try and keep those ribs and pelvis in connection. Okay, just do a couple more. Pop your hands down onto the floor, find your neutral, and then make sure you're nice and lengthened through the upper back. Create your 360 breath in your brace, lift your knees off the floor, and then hinge your hips backwards. So we're flexing the shoulders into that overhead position, keeping that neutral pelvis, neutral lower back, and just hold that position. Keep your neck nice and neutral as well, so don't extend the neck. Keep the ribs and pelvis connected. Breathe into it. A couple more seconds. And then walk your hands backwards. And then you're going to have like a high bum at the minute with your hands down. And then you're just going to go into a deep squat and take your arms up into flexion. And then lower your hands down, lift your bum in the air. And then lower down into a deep squat, arms up into the air. Bum up into the air, hands down. Deep squat, arms up into the air. Keep doing that. Just a few more times. Your quads are probably burning. Let's do one more. And then slowly come up out of that squat into the stand. And then just do some squats to warm up, because we're going to do some overhead squats, but just do some squats just to warm the squat up. So find your neutral. Slowly down. And up. Keeping control of that pelvis. Keep it nice and long through the spine. Making sure that we're thinking about our weight distribution, so making sure we're trying to go down, right down the middle. If you feel like you're shifting to one side, try and correct that movement. And then grab hold of your stick. And we want to take the arms up over the head, but try and keep that rib connection with the pelvis. Don't go into that extension position. So ribs down, neutral pelvis, and then down into your squat. And up. Just go nice and slow so you can keep control of your pelvis. And try and just keep thinking about lengthening through your upper back. So you don't want to round because your hands will just come forwards. Do one more. Then grab your TheraBand. You can put it around your feet. And then we're just going to do some TheraBand thrusters. So put it under, or put your hands, so I'll just kind of show you, into this kind of front rack position. So the TheraBand's going to go over your hands. You're standing on the TheraBand. And then we're going to keep a neutral position in the lower back. Go down into your squat. And then push your hands above your head. But we want to keep the ribs and pelvis connected. And keep that length through the upper back. So just go really slowly. Don't rush the movement. Keep thinking about what's happening in your pelvis and your lower back. Just do a couple more. Okay, pop the TheraBand to one side. You're going to go down into your squat again. Hands down into your bear, and then twist round into your high oblique sit. Bring your leg back into the high oblique sit with the mermaid legs. Lower down onto your forearm, so lower oblique, and then up onto your back into your 3-month supine. And just have your broomstick nearby. Okay, so we're in the 3-month supine. And we want our feet to be higher than the knees. Knees over your hips. Hips in external rotation and abduction. And you want your feet to be ankles in a neutral position. Make sure you've got your neutral lower back and pelvis, so we don't want your lower back lifting off the floor. And ribs and pelvis are connected, so we've got our closed book. Okay, so we're just going to start and do some shoulder flexion. So take your arms up over your head, thumbs down towards the floor. Go nice and steady, nice and slow. Really thinking about what's happening at the ribs. So if you start to feel like your ribs are starting to lift, just pause in that position and just take a breath in. And then on the exhalation, you're going to try and get a little bit lower down with your arms, keeping those ribs connected to the pelvis. Okay, when you've done a few of those, grab hold of your broom or whatever you're using. So don't have your hands too narrow at first, so just as far as your piece of equipment will allow, have your hands spread nice and wide, and you're just going to take your arms back over your head and down. So just back and forwards into flexion, extension. Make sure that you're keeping that neutral pelvis and lower back. Don't let your lower back arch as you're taking your arms up over your head. Don't let your ribs flare, keep them down. So if you feel like you can only go so far, and then your ribs are starting to flare, but you can't get them any lower without them flaring, just pause in that position. Do a couple more. Okay, put the broomstick down. Then we're gonna just roll back onto our side, and then roll back onto our backs. Take the arms back into flexion, and then roll in the other direction, and arms back into flexion. If you want, you can grab hold of your TheraBand, separate, like pull it apart, roll into your side, onto your back and flex the shoulders. So when we're rolling onto our side, imagine you've got your Lego body, so shoulders and pelvis want to move at the same time. You don't want to go pelvis, then shoulders, or shoulders, then pelvis. And we want to control that movement, so you're not just flopping onto your side and you're not throwing yourself back. And don't forget to keep your ribs and pelvis connected when you bring your shoulders back into flexion. Okay. Then you're going to roll onto your side, up into a low oblique sit, into a high oblique sit. And we're just going to do some lifts and flexion. And lower, lift, flexion. Again, every time you take your arms up above your head, we're controlling that ribs and pelvis and keeping those connected. Go nice and steady with this movement, so we want to lower down for 3 seconds. Don't want to land too heavily. You'll end up hurting your knees if you do, so really slow. Just do one more after this. And then you're going to rotate your legs round up into your tall sit. Make sure you're nice and long through the upper back. And again, just do some shoulder flexion in this position and extension. Bring them right back. Flexion, so as we go into flexion, externally rotate and abduct the shoulders. And then as we bring the arms back, internally rotate and adduct the shoulders. So externally rotate and take the shoulders out to the side and in flexion, and then internally rotate and adduct as we come backwards. Ribs and pelvis connected the entire time. Do one more before you roll over to the other side. And again, we're going to lift and flex the shoulders and down and up. Think about what's happening here. Ribs are staying in connection this entire time. Nice and slow, remember 3 seconds down. Just do one more. And then come from this position into your high kneel. And again, we're going to have our arms up in the air. And then you're going to hinge your hips backwards and bring your arms down into extension, internal rotation and adduction. And then as we extend the hip, flex the shoulder, externally rotate and abduct. So with this movement, only go as far back as your supporting knee will allow. So if it feels uncomfortable going too far, just do a little range of movement. And we're trying to hinge at that hip. Make sure we're keeping those ribs connected to the pelvis each time we go up overhead. Just do a couple more. And then come into your high kneel, get your kettlebell nearby. Make sure we're not too narrow with the foot, so we don't want to be here, we want to bring it to the side. Pull the pelvis level with the floor, neutral lower back, neutral pelvis. And then just grab hold of your kettlebell. We're going to do both sides and just aim for 6 presses above the head. Nice and slow and controlled. Just concentrating on keeping your ribs and pelvis in connection. Okay, once you've done 6 on one side, do 6 on the other. Last one. And then put it down. Make sure you're level with the floor, curl your back foot under, and then stand. And just do some high kneel to stand, back to high kneel again. Nice and slow, nice and controlled, concentrating on where the pelvis is, making sure it doesn't shoot to the side, making sure the knee doesn't cave in. And then as you come up, bring your arms up into flexion. And as you come down, bring them back into extension. So again, internal rotation, adduction, and then flexion, abduction, and external rotation. Couple more. And then come down into your high kneel. And then come up, lift your arms above your head and down. So we're into the opposite high kneel now. So again, when we're in the high kneel, arms above the head and hinge. And arms back into extension. And then up and down. And really try and focus on hinging the hip. Don't just let your body round as you come backwards. And again, only go as far back as your supporting knee feels comfortable. Feel that nice stretch down the front of that, or down the back of that front leg. Just do a couple more. Okay. into your high kneel. Not too narrow, foot to the side, pelvis level with the floor. And we're going to do 6 on each side. So, nice and slow, keeping the ribs and pelvis connected. Swap sides, do the other side. Okay, pop your kettlebell down. We're going to do some high kneels to stands, so pelvis level with the floor, knee tracking second and third toe, and stand. Back, slowly lower down, stand. Making sure we don't shoot pelvis to the side, knee cave in, so everything stay nice and square. And then bring your arms up into flexion, external rotation, abduction, and back, internal rotation and abduction. Up, again, keeping the ribs and pelvis connected. Just do a couple more of these. And then grab hold of your, whatever you're using, your broom or your sword, put it above your head, keeping the ribs down towards the pelvis, and we're just going to do some alternating backward lunges. So bring leg back, slowly down and up, and then go to the opposite side and slowly down. So we're just going back into our high kneel position. So make sure we keep the pelvis level with the floor the entire time, and knee tracking second and third toe. So you're really going to need to work on your balance. Just make sure you don't end up toppling over. Do one more each side. And we're done. Right, hope you enjoyed it. See you all soon. Bye bye.